Hey, right, we've just had these delivered. I've got 20 of these in stock, of which half are already going out. Should have gone out yesterday. Actually, before we start this, I just want to make an official apology. I said to about 10 customers last week when I was away on holiday in Bermuda that I'd be shipping these on the Friday. Now, Friday the 15th was the official day that I was allowed to actually dispatch these. My flight was supposed to come in early hours Friday morning. My flight was delayed, and then there was a big hold up on the M25 coming around London. So I didn't get back until early afternoon, by which time I missed my courier driver. So I've already emailed you to apologise for this, but just an official apology that I didn't get these out on Friday as I said I would for a Monday delivery. But these will be dispatched along with all your other goodies, your D7s, your D4s, the S4s that people have been ordering. They'll all be dispatched on Monday for a Tuesday delivery in the UK, and obviously 2-3 days later if you're in Europe, maybe 4 to 5 days for those of you in America and Canada. And we've got a guy in New Zealand as well. That'll probably be a bit more like 5 to 7 days. Got loads of D7s, loads of D7s. Let's get these out. Oh. Empty box. And then we've got like Christmas. We have all the CANSMARTS. Dozens of them. Oh, almost 2 dozen. Loads of them. Right. So let's put those back in there for now. Right, so I just want to talk you through, well, I haven't even plugged in the Generation 2 CanSmart yet, so this is going to be a bit of a fact-finding situation for both of us. But from what I've read the instructions on it last night, and one of the main things that people are talking about that you can do on Gen 2 that you cannot do on the Gen 1 is have the indicators flashing alternate sides. So what I mean by that is, close the door. What I mean by that is this. If I turn my ignition on, now for me, when I use my indicators, I have all my lights staying on. I don't make them turn off. Now, what we can do is if I come to the back of the bike and plug my CanSmart in. Whoa. So if I plug my CanSmart into my computer, as you can see, I've got the CanSmart here, little green light on. Let's come to the software on here. A firmware update is available for your device in order. Just for the record, this is a Generation 1 CanSmart in my bike, not a Gen 2. Would you like to update your device now? Yes. Update available, update firmware now. Please switch off the ignition before continuing. Okay. Firmware upgrade in process. Do not disconnect the device. Firmware upgrade completed. Okay. Let's turn the ignition back on again. Right, so there's nothing new about this because it obviously recognises that I've got a Generation 1 CanSmart, or there could be another piece of software. I don't know yet. I'm literally doing this cold. So you're watching me learn at the same time as you're learning. So make sure you watch till the very, very end. So auxiliary light set 1. So right now, that is my Denalis. My Denali D7s are on light set 1. They have to be because circuit 1 on a Generation 1 CanSmart is 10 amps maximum. D7s punch out 10 amps. Auxiliary light set 2 is a maximum of 4 amps. So I've got my D4s on my circuit 2, but D4s will also punch out a maximum. We'll cover this in greater detail. I think it's 6.6 amps combined. So I can't put them on 100%. So right now they're on 50%. Now there is a video I did a while back showing you the intensity between D4s and D7s. What I didn't tell you in that video is that I actually had both my D4s and my D7s on circuit 1 because it will take it, because you can adjust the ampage on circuit 1 up to 25 amps. But then I had a kill switch on one of the circuits. Oh, sorry, not on one of the circuits. I had a kill switch on one of the sets of lights, so I could show you 100% on both of them, but both on circuit 1, which wasn't a sustainable option going forwards. You know, riding every day, having a separate switch, so I could show you that. But using this setup, D4s and D7s, I cannot run one of those sets of lights at maximum power because the Gen 1 CanSmart is not powerful enough on both circuits. Circuit 1 is, circuit 2 is not. So for me personally, and if any of you guys are out there running this kind of setup, D4s, D7s, well, for you, you will need the Generation 2 CanSmart if you want to run them at full power all the time. You will need that. However, I feel, and we're going to confirm this in this video, I feel a lot of you will not need the Generation 2 CanSmart. Why? Well, because a lot of you are already running just one set of D4s. Now, we're going to forget, we're not even going to talk about the horn and the rear light, the rear B6 light, okay? They're on separate circuits altogether, circuits 3 and 4 if you like. So it's all about circuits 1 and circuits 2, what you can do. And a lot of you have got just D4s, and that's fine. You will not need to get a Generation 2 CanSmart, but I'll cover this and explain why. So for the indicators, now I can go onto my circuit 2 because my D4s are on circuit 2. I've got my D7s switched off all the time. I only let my D7s come on when I flash at 100%. So full beam, they come on. I just don't feel it's necessary. I love the look of the bike with just the D4s on, up high, just underneath the OEM headlight. I like that personally. And then at night time, I've got my D7s literally pointing upwards. So I light everything up. Whereas the D4s are obviously dipped because we don't want to dazzle people when they're running at 10-20%, which they are right now. And when I go to full beam, the D4s go up to 50%, which is the maximum circuit 2 can handle on the Generation 1 CanSmart, which is only 4 amps. I hope you're following me. I'm going to turn on the switch which says off when turn signal is active. So I'm turning that on right now. So when I hit the indicator now, you can see both my lights go out, which I don't like. I always tell customers, don't do this, because if you're only running D4s and you're going down the road at 11 o'clock at night, midnight, it's pitch black, you're in the countryside, your eyes have adapted to this extra wide beam of light. It's fantastic, you know, you can see so much more. As soon as you indicate and those lights go off, from my own personal experience and other people who have bought this setup, it's like turning all your lights off. It's actually quite scary. You can actually, you know, frighten yourself a little bit because all the lights go off. Now, as long as these aren't too close to these or blinding them, so you can see yourself when I indicate, okay, let's turn that back off again. When I indicate, you can still work out the indicator. Now, what a lot of people are raving on about with the new Generation 2 is that when I hit that indicator, so if I go left, what everyone wants to happen is that. Yeah, they want this. Yeah, let's try that again. Off. So that's right. Turn signal on, turn signal off, and the light comes back on. That's what people want. I figured out a way we can do this with the Generation 1 CanSmart, but I haven't actually done it yet. So we're going to test this theory today. Not on my bike, we're going to do it in a much easier way so you can see the full wiring diagram, which I'm very excited about. I put a lot of work and effort into this. So on that note, please would you subscribe if you haven't, because you know, this takes a lot of my time. I'm doing this on a Saturday, I'm supposed to be the weekend enjoying it with my family. So please, I feel that there's great value in this video, because if you haven't bought that Gen 2 CanSmart already, and you find out that you actually don't need the Generation 2 CanSmart, well then I've just saved you best part of £200. So please, would you give me a like, leave a comment, and more importantly, subscribe. I really need the subscribers for this account for me to continue doing these videos, because there's going to be more products coming out which I can give advice on when it comes to the BMW equipment. Right, so looking back down here, we can unplug this now. Stick the bung back in there so we don't lose that. Always be very careful with that little waterproof bung, because they can get lost very easily, which I know from lots of experience. Right, so as you look at the Generation 1 CanSmart, we're going to start unplugging everything. So I'm not going to give thorough instructions of what does what here, because I've got other videos that you can view on my channel which shows full installation. Okay, so I just want to, so I'm just unplugging the rear light. So put that over there, curl that away, and I'm now going to unplug the horn. There's the horn. You can always tell the horn because it's got the two wires to the switch. It's always green and black. But what you're going to see in a minute, on the Generation 2, they use 3 pins. They use 3 wires going to the horn. And I'll talk about why they're doing that in a moment on a close-up. Now let's undo these circuits. I don't know which one's circuit 1 and circuit 2. It doesn't matter because you will you just switch them around when you plug them all back in again. Right, so that is the CanSmart unplugged. It's still plugged into the bike, however, but it's actually unplugged from the lights and the horn and the rear light. So all we have there is wired up to the battery, and it's still wired up going through the tire, well, there's a word for it, that tire pressure thingy at the back. So it's still plugged into that. Because we're going to need these in a moment to plug into our little experiment we're doing. Right. So circuit 1 and circuit 2. That's all we need, those two there. Circuit 1's the long one, circuit 2 is the short one. Right, now unfortunately I haven't got a Generation 1 CanSmart here. I can still get a hold of them, but I just feel that everyone's going to be buying the Gen 2 CanSmart from now on. The Gen 1 CanSmart has now been reduced in price by about £10. The entry level of the Gen 2 has come in less than what the Gen 1 CanSmart was, which is great news. So obviously, anyone who's buying this whole setup from you, where you're going to buy a bundle, well, it'd be stupid not to buy the Generation 2. But what I want to talk about and stress is the people, especially people who I've supplied, I've actually installed kits for. They're spending hundreds of pounds with me. Some of them have spent in excess of £1,000, £1,500 with me on gear. And the last thing they want to hear is that there's a brand new Generation 2 CanSmart which is better than the Gen 1, which they've just forked out loads of money for. Which I do feel that pain, but you know, technology is always moving on. As I've already mentioned, that I do feel that there's a lot of people out there that won't need this Generation 2, and you're just going to be buying it and not actually getting the benefits from it, unless you're going to be running my similar setup, D4s and D7s and more, because then you'll need it. So let's unbox this now so you can see exactly what you get. That's how it comes in the box. You've got some instructions, and you see a little piggyback thing in there. So I'm just going to put this on the side. There's the instructions. The little piggyback. Now this is for the brake light, the B6 brake light. Now on a Generation 1, it's different. Here's a Gen 1, here's a Gen 2. Gen 1, the plug is exactly the same. Gen 2, the plug is exactly the same, which feeds the B6 rear light. The other side, which goes to the CanSmart, they are completely different. Can you see that? 3-pin and a 2-pin. Gen 1, Gen 2. Which means the CanSmart has got a different connector on it for this. They both do the same thing though. Why do they do this? I'll explain. So put that back over there so we don't mix things up. Gen 2. There's the CanSmart. I'm going to put that to the side for now. You get the wiring harnesses. You get 3 harnesses. Circuit 1, Circuit 2 and sound bomb. So this time they have all the same connections that go to the CanSmart. Whereas, so I'm going to put this on my left leg. Over here, I'm going to show you a sound bomb cable from a Generation 1. The ends are identical. Generation 2, Generation 1. Yep, identical. We go to the other ends. Generation 2 has got the new 3 pins. Generation 1 has got this, remember? So it's got the 2 pins, whereas the Generation 2 has got 3 pins. Why? I will explain. So we're going to put the Generation 1 cables to one side so we don't confuse matters. Stick them in the drawer. And then we have the CanSmart itself. So nothing very different really when you look at the CanSmart apart from the plugs. So you get a little bunch of cable ties. I never use these. I like to use big long cable ties as long as you possibly can. Makes the installation so much easier. USB cable to connect the CanSmart to a computer so you can program it. The CanSmart itself, which looks just like the one as I said beforehand. All this is the same, the 30 amp fuse in there. It's a shame I haven't got the CanSmart Generation 1 with me. Apart from the one that's on my bike, I haven't got one I can take out of a box. I do apologise about that. I'm literally, as soon as they're in stock, they go. They sell immediately. So all the connections are the same apart from the sound bomb and the rear light connector. And the reason they've done that is because they don't want to limit you to having the sound bomb and the rear light on those circuits. You can put anything you want in them. And you've got that third wire dimming facility as well. So the beauty of having the 3 wires is that you get the Denali's dimming. There's a word for it. I do apologise that I have a special word for it which they painted or something, but it's the whole 3-wire data dimming control thing. Which is fantastic. You can adjust it on the fly, with the little wheel, and so you obviously got that in circuits 3 and 4 as well. But for my setup, I'll still be using those other, the sound bomb cable for the sound bomb and the rear light for the rear light, if that makes sense. I'll still be using it very similar to the Generation 1. So on a Generation 1, circuit 1 is set up as default, if I remember rightly, at 10 amps. As soon as you take out the box, you've got 10 amps that you can use. And on circuit 2, you have 4 amps. When you plug in circuit 1, when you plug in your CanSmart to the software, you can click on where it says 10 amps, and there's a drop down, and you can scroll and select up to 25 amps. Now, you would only pick 25 amps if you know you are running that kind of ampage through the CanSmart. So you wouldn't pick 25 amps and just run a set of DMs or a set of D2s, because if there's a fault, if anything happens, well then the fuse isn't going to kick in and do its job. So you only adjust it accordingly. So if I put my D4s, so my D4s are on circuit 2, which is a maximum of 4 amps on circuit 2, I can't adjust circuit 2 on the 4 amps. If I run my D4s at 100% on full beam, which should be a draw of 6.6 amps, well, the fuse will blow. It's a returnable fuse. You can reset the fuse just by turning the ignition off and back on again. But as soon as you go on full beam at 100% on the D4s, the lights will just go off. Just the D4 lights. So whereas now, because I am going to fit this Generation 2 CanSmart to my bike, I can now run everything at 100%. But circuit 1, to my knowledge, and we're going to find out shortly, is not available. So your maximum ampage is 10 amps, and the D7s run at 10 amps. So bear that in mind as well. Right, so that's basically this. Right, now the thing that people have been bang on about is in the software you can select that if you want one side to go off, like I was showing you, or one side to go on and off. But I believe we can do this on the Generation 1, so we're going to do that first. So before we even touch this Generation 2, I know that's where all the excitement should be, but we're going to do this experiment now. Okay, we're going to do it right now. So what I've done is I bought this box in. Now, Samsung are not sponsoring this video in any way, shape or form, but I bought another new panel TV for one of my rooms in the house, and it's such a big box I couldn't fit it in the recycling bin. And it's just been sitting here in my workshop. So, but today I found really good use for it. Are you ready for this? So what I've done here, I've got a set of D4s here, and I've got a set of DR1s. And on that note, let's find out what the maximum ampage is for DR1s and D4s, because I actually don't know top of my head. So the DR1s, I don't want to open up a brand new box. It doesn't have it written on the outside. So let's go on to the Denali website and have a look. What am I doing, Denali website? Let's go on to a bike thing. Let's go on to a bike thing, not Denali, a bike thing. I don't think a lot of people know how to use my website, you know. So if you're looking for a product, just type it in at the top. First type in DR1, and you've got DR1 bundle, DR1 light pod. Click on that, as me. Click on that, and we can go through and look at all the specifications for this. So specification: LED 10 watt Cree, power draw 0.8 amps. So these are not very powerful. I say they're not powerful, but they are really powerful. I've shown you in a previous video. So DR1s go super long range, not as far as the D7s, but they seem like they do, but it's a very narrow beam of light and they go a long way down the road. So they are very powerful, but I think that's in the technology of the lens and how it's all set up. But the draw on these is actually quite low level. So this is great. So we've got a power draw, maximum power draw of, let's say 1 amp. So put those two together. So 0.8 amps times 2, that's 1.6 amps together. So let's say 2 amps. So the DR1s are 2 amp draw. And then the D4, where are we? That should come up on the right hand side as like a recommended product. I need to spend more time on my website updating it. Just type in D4, hit the space bar because you've got to put 3 characters in. So there we are, LightPod D4. And this is a power draw of 3.3 amps max. So 2 together is 6.6 plus the 2. So let's say 7 plus the 2 is 9 amps. So if I have all these switched on the bike, they're going to draw 9 amps in maximum at 100%. Okay, not when it's dipped, it hardly draws anything. But 100%, they require 9 amps. Right, so Gen 1 CanSmart, remember, we're not doing Gen 2 just yet. So I'm going to get some Gen 1 cables that I have lying around, spares. I've just finished after it's actually taken me three days to do this. Not 3 complete days, just interruption after interruption. But I've got the Gen 2, the Generation 2 Denali CanSmart installed on my bike. I've been doing my very, very best to try and find a way of convincing myself and others that you don't actually need to upgrade from Gen 1 to Gen 2. Not everybody does. And the reason why I've upgraded, so obviously one of the main reasons is I'm a Denali dealer. I sell these, I fit these all the time, so I need to be installing the latest products on my bike. However, one of the key things that the Generation 2 CanSmart do, which the Generation 1 doesn't, whether you want that on your bike or not, I might find that I end up turning it off. I can now indicate left and right, and I can have the corresponding side lights switch off. So if I indicate right, these 2 lights will turn off, and I'll show you this and the same with the left hand side respectively. So that's really, really good, because on the Generation 1, when you indicate, it automatically switches both sides off, which puts you into basically darkness. It doesn't put you actually into darkness, because what it does, it resorts back to the BMW OEM lights, and you know, you still got light there, but your eye adapts to that extra power of Denali lights that you've got, those extra lumens firing down the road. And when you're in a country lane and you end up indicating right or left, it feels like you've just switched all the power from your bike, and it can be quite scary. So with the Generation 2, we can now have one set of lights, or one light. So for customers out there who've already got a set of D4s or one set of D7s on their bike, one side will remain on whilst the other side goes off, which obviously gives better clarity to the indicator that's actually flashing. It's a good thing to have. The downside, anyone who's already got Generation 1 CanSmart with lights on their bike with a wiring harness threaded through, routed through alongside the tank, you know, through the middle, down the wishbone and everything, and you've done it yourself, you're gonna have to rewire it all again, I'm afraid. Well, you do and you don't. If you don't rewire it, it's going to be a bit of a messy job. However, if you pull it all back through again, and do a fresh job, you're going to be doing a proper job. So I've actually taken all my wires back out again and rethreaded them through. So at the moment, on a Generation 1, you would have, historically, let's say these D4s for instance, the D4s I've got here, one each side, they would be running on circuit 1. And then I would have the D7s, well actually no, in my example I've got D7s on circuit 1 and I'd have the D4s on circuit 2. But just to give you an example, you would have a pair left and right on circuit 1, and if you've got another pair on there, left and right would be circuit 2. Now to make the whole indicator thing work, which I just explained, so one side goes off, you have got to have circuit 1 on one side of the bike and circuit 2 on the other side of the bike. You can't come down the middle and split them off each ways. This is what we've historically done. We now have to say circuit 1 on one side, circuit 2 on the other side, and then you program it. You program the CanSmart when you plug it into your computer to say, I want circuit 1, which they now call the red circuit or the white circuit, but I now want that right hand side, I want that to go off when I'm indicating right. And then same with the left. If you want the second circuit, you want that to go off when I'm indicating left or right, whichever one I said. So if anything, I'm actually quite pleased because it's a much neater job, because I've got the wires going down the left hand side and the wires going down the right hand side, and I've got nothing meeting in the middle. So historically the wires would come up the middle of the bike, the join at the top, and one would go that way and one would go that way. Then you'd have another circuit also joining that, which meant more wires. So you'd have 4 wires coming in from the lights joining up right in the middle of the bike, and you've got to, obviously there's not a lot of space to play with. You know, I always did a very neat job when I did it, whereas now we can just keep it all in the sides. The other thing you have to change is the sound bomb cable. So they've now put 3 pins on the sound bomb connector on the CanSmart, which is a fantastic idea, which I'll explain about in a minute. And the other thing they've done is for the rear brake as well, that's also 3 pins. So if you are going to use a rear brake, there's a little pigtail adapter which you plug onto that connection on the CanSmart, so it goes to your rear brake light. And if you're going to use a sound bomb, then there's also another pigtail adapter to go to 2 wires to go to the sound bomb. But if you didn't want a sound bomb, or if you didn't want a rear brake light, you can use those 2 channels to go to more lights if you wanted to, or other auxiliary items. So that's the beauty of it, and because they've all got 3 wires on every single plug, you have the capability of using the data dimming product which Denali have. So you can dim anything you want, so you can have more lights. So I'm going to turn this on so you can see this, how I've got this working. So I've got my D4s and D7s on this side of circuit 1, and my D4 and D7 on the left hand side at circuit 2. So I'm going to indicate right. As you can see, the right side turns off. Yep. And then if I go left, the left side turns off. So I've had to thread through a whole new sound bomb cable because of the new CanSmart. So there's your horn. Now I've also got a rear light as well. Now I'm contemplating on taking my rear light off, because I would actually like to have one of these auxiliary lights to stay on when I'm indicating right, and same with the left. And the one I'd like to stay on, it would actually be the D7, because it's nowhere near the light at all. By doing that, if I wanted to, I can use the rear light feed and just program the CanSmart to say I'm now actually feeding a set of D7s and I'm not feeding the rear light, because I'd like it to stay on, if anything, and just have the D4 go off, which would be quite a nice idea. I might end up doing that probably earlier next year. One of the things that I've done that I wanted to bring to you guys was the fact that it's of how the wiring is done. So well, what I've done here is I've got hold of a great big Samsung box, and I thought I'd try this new project out so I can show you something pretty cool. So what I've done here is I've put a set of D7s and a set of D4s and a set of S4s. So this will be a typical example for someone who wants to run all of these at the same time. Now, here's a wire. We're going to plug this actually into my bike so we can see these working on the box. Now, remember what I said, historically, if this was circuit 1 on the left as you're viewing it, if this is circuit 1, this would normally, historically, go to, instead of it splitting and going to a D7 and a D4, it would normally feed both D7s. And then circuit 2 over here would go, let's say, go to both D4s. But as you can see, there's no joining in the middle at all here. So I've got both the D7 and D4 on circuit 2 and a D7 and a D4 on circuit 1. You cannot do this with a Gen 1 CanSmart. You just can't do it. If you did, you just look odd, because you can't program the Gen 1 CanSmart to do what we're going to do with this. And then at the moment, I've got the S4s unplugged. But what we're going to do is run an extension. Sorry, we're going to run another circuit to these to show you how we could have these remaining on, for instance. So come to the back of the bike. Here we have the new CanSmart. So I'm going to show you the old CanSmart so you can see the differences in size. So there we can see the difference in size between the two CanSmarts. Can you see that? So it's a good, I don't know, 3 centimeters longer, I'd say. But on the CanSmart 1, generation 1, you'll notice that all the plugs are not all of them, but they are different somewhat. So let me put this camera on and mount it properly so we can see clearly what's going on. So what we're going to do is we're going to unplug the plugs on the CanSmart, which is feeding the lights on the bike itself. And that's the other one there. So I've unplugged those two there. So what I've undone so far, I've unplugged the D7s and the D4s, circuit 1 and circuit 2. I'm also going to unplug the rear light, which I can see is this one here, because that goes to the rear light. Because we're going to use this to feed the S4s on the box. And I've left the horn plugged in. All right, so this obviously this is all wired up to the battery on the bike, and going through the bike, you know, so it all comes on with the ignition. So let's grab those extension cables which are feeding circuit 2. Now it doesn't matter how you get these plugs on, believe it or not, because you can program every single on the Gen 2. You can program every circuit to do whatever you want it to do. They all go up to a maximum of 25 amps, so you can adjust them. The whole unit will do 30 amps maximum, but you can adjust it up to more. So let's plug that into there, and then the other side. Okay, and then we've got another cable, extension cable, we're going to run to those S4s. I did put it down somewhere. So on the S4s, I'm just going to so you can see how I've joined these. These are being connected up the traditional way like you'd do on a Gen 1, because you can still wire up a Gen 2 in the same way as a Gen 1. It's just that you won't be able to do the old indicator thing with it. Rightio. Let's wire that up. Right, let's power this up. I'd say ignore what you see at first, because things might need programming. So, and we'll plug it in so you see what happens. So let's turn her on. Right, so there we have them. So because I've done the S4s on a complete different circuit, I thought they were going to trip actually, because they're only attached to the rear light settings at the moment. When I indicate left, sorry, I've got these wired up back to front now. But do you know what? This is really good, because I'm going to show you that we don't have to unplug anything. We can just switch around all the programming on the CanSmart. So when I indicate right, that side's going off, but you notice how the S4s are staying on. Now, if I wanted to, whoa, this is so bright here. Hang on a second, let me just turn that off. I can't stand there. If I really wanted to, I could put an extension on one of these circuit 1s or circuit 2s to go to the S4, which means I could have left the rear brake all plugged in, and I could have them all doing the same thing. So that would become an extension of circuit 2. And the same over here. I could have made that an extension of circuit 3 just by putting on a small extension piece to this. Yeah? So I'm just trying to show you how versatile this is, that if you really wanted to, if I really, really wanted to, I could have these D7s on my bike, let's say use these for example, I could have them remaining on and not being affected by the indicators, the turn signals, as I switch them on, and I could just have the D4s. Or I could do it the other way around. I could say I want the D7s to go off, but I want the D4s to stay on. Or I could have them all staying on, or I could have them all going off, or basically you can do a lot more with this new generation 2 CanSmart, which is great. And you can play around with all the ampage on each channel, which you can't do on the Gen 1. Only circuit 1 was the versatile channel, which you could change up and down right up to 25 amps. Whereas now, all 4 channels, you can mess around with them right up to 25 amps, all of them. But you must bear in mind that you can't start running 25 amps through every channel all at the same time, because the whole unit itself will only allow you to run at 30 amps. We're going to plug in the CanSmart. So let's adjust this camera at the back so you can see what's going on the computer. All right, okay, I'm hoping you can see this clearly. Got the camera as close as I can to my laptop as I possibly can. Let's plug it in and then turn the ignition on so you can see all the lights will come on again. Okay. Right, so as it stands, as you're going through this has all changed actually since I was last on here. Red and orange circuit, so you've got red, blue, yellow and white. So at the moment, I can tell you right now that the wires going down to the box with the lights on them is the red and the white circuit. All right, and I've actually told it to do this whole left-right thing. I can aux 1 left, aux 1 pair 1. So if I wanted to, I'm not going to go right into massive detail. It's all in the instructions, and it all gets very confusing if I start digging deeper, because this is a very, very versatile piece of kit. But if I go back, if I click on aux 1, this will basically operate them as a pair. So even though we've put all the wiring down the left-hand side for circuit 2 and down the right-hand side for circuit 1, all that work would be a waste of time if we were to select light pair 1, because it means it will work just like a Gen 1 would. So I've got this set up as left and I've got the white circuit set up as right. But as we know, when I indicate left, the right side's going off. So I'm not going to unplug anything. All I'm going to do is change this. Here we are, that's what I'm used to seeing. So change red circuit left light 1 to right light 1, and then change the white circuit from right light 1 to left light 1, and hit apply at the bottom. Right, also notice the ampage. So I've got here, it says 5 amps, and I've got 5 amps here. I've got 2 amps for the horn. So the horn, we leave that as it is, and the brake light circuit's 2 amps. Now, if I haven't even done full beam in front of you right now. If I do full beam, I'm telling you, I know it'll trip, and some of the lights will just go off. So for this circuit here, for the S4s, I can't remember what the S4s punch out, but let's just say, for instance, it's not 10 amps because it could be actually, but I say it's 7.5. But if I just put it to 10 amps, it's very important you don't overkill on this one. Just because you've got 25 amps to play with, don't use the full 25 amps, because if there's an error or a fault with actual light, well then the fuse might not trip. So you find out what the max ampage is on the S4s, and I think it's going to be something around about 6 or 7 amps as a pair. So we're going to put that down to 10 amps. Blue circuit 2 amps, that's fine, the horn's going to work fine on that. So the red circuit, so this is the left or the right, so D4 and a D7 together. D4 punches out 3.3 amps, one light does, and the D7 punches out 5 amps on max. So we're playing with, what did I say, 3.3, 5 amps at 8.3. So we need to change these to 10 amps each as well. So the right and the left, 10 amps each. So I'm happy with that. So we now know that they're not going to trip. Perfect, and hit apply. So at 10 amps. For low beam, so on auxiliary lights 1, which is circuit 1, I can adjust the day intensity. So I like mine on 20% and night intensity. That's just for running light, and 100% for the high beam. So if I now flash the lights, you can see I need to do, and we've got the strobe there. If I indicate left, you notice because we swapped them over, it now goes left. The left one's turn off. If I indicate right, the right one goes off, and it slowly comes back on and fades back in, which is a nice touch. Modulation, do you know what? I might be able to bring you another video on modulation at a later date. I am very, very confused with the whole modulation thing. Very, very confused with it because it only works in daylight hours, and if you increase the modulation, the lights just flicker, and if anything, just bloody annoying. I need to do some research and ask Denali more about the modulation, why people will be using it, but it can only be used in daylight. So turn that off, modulation. Okay, so with the brake light, we've got that on 10 amps now, but we need to rename it now. It's not a brake light anymore, so we're going to turn it into light pair 1 and hit apply. It's still on 10 amps, I don't think it needs to be that many amps. So now when I do they seem like they're on 4. Oh no, they do get brighter. It's because they're pointing right at the camera, so they seem to be a bit bright. I can't. God, these are so bright. I probably don't seem very bright on here. So I do that. That way you can see how bright they are, and you can see they're getting brighter, and they will strobe as well. So you can see what I've done there now. So do the left indicator again. They're turning. They're both turning off. Right, there's a reason for that as well. I've put the S4s on light pair 2, and I've switched them so they won't turn off whilst I indicate. I'm going to put day intensity and the run light at 10%. So you should see them adjusting right now. Yeah, that's me playing with the CanSmart. So I'm going to put them on 20%. For running light and 100% for full beam. And so when I hit the indicator now, I've got it so they stay on. So you can see how that can be used. It's quite a versatile thing. So you're going along, you've instructed the bike to turn off the lights that you want to be turned off, which are sitting quite near the turn signals. But for instance, if you had those S4s nice and low, let's say fitted to each side of the wheel, or on each side of the fender, well then you don't need to have them turned off. So you could do that if you wanted to. Indicate right, so the left side stays on, but you can have both sides of the S4s. It's up to you if you want to if you wanted to have them switched on or switched off. But if you wanted it to switch off, you would have to put them on an extension for each circuit. You wouldn't have them wired up to another circuit, if that makes sense. Right, so I hope this video has been of use to you, so you can see the difference between the Gen 1 and the Gen 2. I don't know how I'm going to put this video together really, because I've done video footage from over 3 days where I've been learning about how this all works and trying to figure out how I can show you, because obviously the wiring is all different in the bike, and then I had a dead battery on my bike as well because it hasn't been ridden for nearly 3 months because it's been away having insurance damage done to it. So it's come back with a flat battery, which a flat battery causes all manner of problems to these bikes. I thought I had faulty indicators because I was getting the rapid flashing on my indicators, and it was literally just because the battery was so low, and then all of a sudden it died, the battery died, and the lights were doing all sorts of things. So I've had to put that on charge just so it's all working okay. If this has been of any benefit to you at all, please subscribe to the channel, give me a like, and if you want me to install, if you live in the UK and you fancy a ride to me, you can come here. I've got a nice cozy seat for you. I've got a nice, I know I've got a jacket on, but it's nice and cozy in here. I've got nice good heating. I've got the best coffee machine in the whole of the country. I do make amazing coffee. Book it in, buy a bundle from me, bring it here. I'm gonna stick it on my ramp, wire it all up for you. You're gonna go away feeling so happy. So bear that in mind.